In October of 2023, we shared the story of Derrick "Tank" Evans Jr., who disappeared in Valdosta, Georgia, on or about November 7th, 2020. His mother, Tamara, was struggling then to gain attention for his case and to maintain contact with law enforcement. Though she had received tips, she was unsure whether they were being fully followed up on, and rumors in the community, they were swirling. Now, more than a year later, Tamara still finds herself in the same position. She and her family have conducted numerous searches. They've sought out evidence, and they've even been contacted by private groups who are offering to help. But they still have not found Tank, and those responsible for his disappearance, and for what Tamara believes to be his likely murder, have not been charged. Today, Tamara is coming to you, our listeners, with a very specific ask. Please, listen to this episode, refamiliarize yourself with Derrick's case, and download the flyer that we've made. You can find it on our website and on our social media. We need this shared everywhere, in hopes that she can finally get the tips that she needs to push her son's case forward. We are paying for targeted ads across South Georgia and North Florida in hopes that the right people see this flyer, his photos, hear the story, and contact authorities. If you know something and you don't want to reach out to police, you can contact Tamara at jackson72t@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us at falllinepodcast@gmail.com. We will get your tips to the authorities. As always, you can call Valdosta Police Department at 229-293-3145. So please, listen, share, and follow Tamara's Facebook page. You can find it linked in our show notes. There's discussion of homophobia and violence in this episode. Listener discretion is advised. This is The Fall Line. If you're in the city of Valdosta, Georgia, you're practically in Florida. It sits 15 miles or so from the state line. Valdosta is a fairly small place. According to the 2020 census, there's less than 60,000 residents in the city proper. But it's also a university town, so there's nightlife and culture built around the school. It's also been home to the South Georgia Pride Festival for nearly 15 years. Then there are theme parks, historic sites, a huge swath of wetlands, and the hardwood and pine forests. Valdosta is the hot and humid South. Even in winter, it never truly gets cold. And with Florida only 30 minutes or so south, and with so much water everywhere, it seems like an easy place to disappear, too. According to NamUs, there are only 6 missing persons cases in Lowndes County, Georgia, of which Valdosta is the county seat. All 6 cases are listed as originating in Valdosta. Since NamUs entry is not compulsory, we can't verify that total. There could be cases elsewhere in the county, outside Valdosta itself. But of the 6 listed, the earliest dates back to 1981, the disappearance of Ann Taylor Dormanti, then 30 years old, who disappeared during what seems to have been an apparent break-in. Half of the disappearances on record have occurred since 2018. Of those, Laurah Jones, who went missing in 2018, Derrick Evans Jr., who disappeared in 2020, and Walter Mintz, who was last seen in 2021. All 3 of the recent cases contain few details. Walter was a Valdosta resident who was apparently staying at a local motel, and whose car and possessions were discovered there after he lost contact with family. Laurah was last seen with associates from Tifton, Georgia. And Derrick was last seen in his own home. His family has been trying to piece together the precise events of what occurred in late November of 2020 for the last 3 years. But it hasn't been easy. Local rumor, the hesitancy of possible witnesses to come forward, and what Derrick's mother describes as a difficulty communicating with law enforcement has made their search for their eldest son, whom they call Tank, even harder. We have been aware of Derrick's case for a few years now, since LAMP, the missing persons arm of the Transdo Task Force, featured his case on their social media. If you follow us on those channels, you've likely seen us share his case. But recently, Derrick's mother, Tamara, asked specifically for help via podcast to get his story out to a wider audience, which is why we added his case to our season of Unsolved South. But we waited until October, our mid-season, to release this episode because Tamara had 2 more searches to complete based on new information that had come in. The information was so specific that she thought she might be recovering some of her son's remains. Those 2 searches bring the total number that she's completed for her son to 6. Sometimes she's been joined by as many as 20 people, and sometimes she's accompanied by only her husband. She's gone into swampy marshland, to parks, to structures where she's been told that her son was held captive. Tamara will go anywhere. She's been sent photos. She's heard the worst stories that you can imagine. At the time of the release of this broadcast, she has not found Derrick, but Tamara feels that she has to follow up when she hears anything pertaining to Derrick's case. Otherwise, she tells us, she's afraid that it might not happen. To her knowledge, there has not been an organized search conducted by law enforcement. That is something that we cannot definitively check, though no search effort has been mentioned in the media. We have reached out repeatedly to the Valdosta Police Department to try and get a statement or an interview or any information regarding their work on his case. We also emailed the city's General Public Information Officer for comment or an interview for this series, but we did not get a response. Because we have not been able to make contact with any officials, the views expressed are necessarily limited to the thoughts and feelings of Derrick's family and what we could cross-check in local media. Due to the nature of the open investigation, our FOIA results were limited to an incident report. It contained very little information, and nothing that had not already been released by local journalists. And Derrick Evans Jr.'s story had been covered in the local news in Valdosta, but that reporting has been concise, mostly as in the case of many missing adults. The point has been to make the community aware of his disappearance, and to share his photos and his physical stats. Based on what we've reviewed, the basics have been disseminated. When he was last heard from, and his physical description, and contact information for law enforcement, with some commentary from his family. There have been articles reminding the public of his family's growing concern, but no extensive coverage, like the kind that our friend Renetta DeBose provides on her Cold Case Project specials, on his disappearance. Tamara is hoping that she can get that kind of coverage to create movement in Derrick's case. According to local station WALB, Derrick's family last heard from him on November 7th, 2020. Derrick, who was 26 that year, was normally in close contact with his family and with his friends. In fact, he'd spoken to at least one person that very day. But at some point, on that Saturday, he fell off the radar. And his mother, Tamara, has not been able to pinpoint precisely when Derrick was last seen. We know that he had plans to go out, but the last person to actually lay eyes on him as a witness, and not a perpetrator, we can't say for sure. In 2020, Derrick had recently moved into the Magnolia Square apartments in Valdosta and out of his paternal grandmother's house, so he was not in the constant contact he'd been in before. But he still spoke to his grandmothers, his cousins, his siblings, or his mother on a daily basis. In fact, he'd planned a trip to Atlanta just that week with a cousin, but he'd canceled at the last minute. Derrick had a job at the local Walmart, and many friends in Valdosta, in nearby Quitman and the surrounding area. And he was in a relationship, though it was reportedly stormy. But overall, his life was settled. He wasn't one to just leave without warning. What worried relatives most, though, about his sudden disappearance was that Derrick had recently been diagnosed with a serious illness. Though it was not publicized at the time of his disappearance, Tamara tells us that Derrick had a series of very important appointments scheduled in the months ahead. She did not think he'd possibly miss them, as it would be a life or death situation. Even if he had not been sick, no one thought that he would disappear, and they still don't. His family believes that Derrick is dead, that he was murdered. And now, They desperately need the people of Valdosta to come forward with what they know to help them find Derrick and solve the crime. We were able to speak with two members of Derrick's family, who all call him by his family nickname, Tank, for this episode. His mother Tamara and his cousin Tia, who was more like a sister to him. We asked Tamara to speak about their family's background, how they came to live in Valdosta, and to tell us about Derrick's early life.
Well, my mama married our daddy. He was from Ohio, and when they got married, that's how we ended up in Ohio. And then they split up and we moved to Georgia.
Tamara's family settled in the small town of Quitman, which is about 20 minutes west of Valdosta. Today, less than 4,000 people live there, but they had relatives in Quitman, so it was easy for it to feel like home.
I was 4. I was 4 years old when we moved there. I was starting pre-K. A quiet town. It wasn't a loud town at all. It was more family-oriented. You know, everybody was like family. It wasn't no bad place at all. Country living, playing in the dirt, marble, hopscotch, all that old stuff back in the days that they don't do no more. It was church on Sunday. We went to Church of Christ Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays.
Tamara's mother had 3 daughters, and she instilled a strong work ethic in all her children, and a unique system for making sure that they were ready to go out into the world, whether they were single, in a relationship, or even had children. They were to stay home until they were financially independent and able to support themselves, and had the means to live comfortably. Tamara told us that she was not allowed to move out until she was 23, which was after she had her first child.
We had to have our furniture paid off. We had to have everything paid off, towels, rags. So we had to have exactly everything that we needed before we moved out. It wasn't no you move out and then you start paying on furniture. She wanted us to be sought and had everything that we needed to move into our place. We was working, so we got the furniture. We paid the furniture company until it's paid off, and car, we paid that off until it's paid off. We could not move out until we paid our stuff. She wouldn't let us go out and just be out there and not have no kitchen set, no. That was her rule. That was my mama's rule. To stay working and always take care of yourself and your kids. That's the one rule she made for us. And that rule is for now today. It don't matter if you got a husband, a boyfriend, or whatever you got. Always work and take care of yourself and your kids. That was her. And that's how we is today.
So, when Derrick, or Tank, was born, Tamara was still at home, preparing for her independent life. She talked to us about what it was like to raise him those first few years with her mother and her sisters.
Tank came along in April 24th, 1994. I was 20 years old when he came. It was more me and my mama and my sisters. We all stayed in the house together. And we did mostly the same thing we did as growing up, cooked together, ate together, worked together, talked together, stayed together, was always together. We had little friends, but weren't really friends. It was just associates. I got pregnant at 20, so I was with his dad during the time. He stayed with his mom, so that's how it was. And I had Tank, my first son. He's my first child. He was born with a big head. He wore 5 pounds, 7 ounces when he was born, but his head was bigger than his body. So his daddy started calling him Tank, and that's how he came up with the name Tank, and it just stuck with him. But he was so little with the body, but his head was huge. He was just with family all the time. Like, we didn't do much of nothing. We just shop, eat, talk, watch TV, dance on Friday, Saturday. Because he loved to dance. Then he continued dancing as he got older. Dance was his thing. Janet Jackson and all that different stuff. He he was a good kid. He had his ways, but he was good. We had a good life, you know.
But things weren't always so easy for Tank. Tamara tells us that school was a struggle. Not the work, but the environment.
School was hard for him. Like, he did good up until maybe the 5th grade. He just changed. He started changing. And I don't know what happened. I put him in counseling. But it was just something about school that he didn't like. He got into fights all the time. I don't know what happened in school, and he never would tell me. He was always very secretive about stuff. Even being so young, he was always quiet, and he started being a little rebellious and getting in trouble and in fights all the time. The only thing they used to say is he's just angry. He just don't like this person, or this person picking on him. And I try to go to the school and straighten it out and talk with the parents and see what was going on. And it just continuously went until he turned like 16. He just didn't want to go to school no more. And he was different. He was gay, you know, and it started early. My other kids, you know, always got into fights with other kids about it. It was a lot. Boys, you got to have a no somewhere in there. Because if you don't put them chains on them boys, like, you don't got to clang them, but you got to have some kind of control that you can say, stop, no, don't do that. And he moved out with me and moved in with his daddy, mama. They made it okay.
Much later, when Derrick was an adult, Tamara discovered that he had gone through traumatic experiences in his childhood that he had not shared with her. And she feels a lot of guilt about that to this day. Because, had she known, she says she would have acted. Her children were already in counseling and receiving support, but she would have concentrated her efforts.
And I wish I would have knew. That beats me up a lot. That bothers me a lot, and it still hurt my heart because I didn't know. He kept that from me from a long time.
She tells us that she also regrets that Tank may have felt judged when he came out to her, something she says was not her intention, but she thinks it created some distance in their relationship when he was newly an adult. She tells us that he was already a private person, but that Derrick was even more so after he turned 18. But it was clear to Tamara that Derrick was enjoying life, and for that, she was glad.
I can't judge you because I never judged you. I had no problem with it. You my child. Once he got out of school, he just took off. It was nothing or nobody could stop him from being who he wanted to be. Like, you wasn't going to stop him. He was out there. He hung with mostly women, but they used to do dance shows and stuff like that. He was, like he say, living my best life. Like, he loved to dance. So he was out there. He was having fun. He was friendly.
We also spoke with Tia, Derrick's cousin. They were only a few years apart in age and grew up more like siblings. Tia considers Derrick to not only be a close relation, but one of her very best friends. When Brooke asked Tia to describe Derrick, here's what she told us.
He was very, very family-oriented. He loved children. Loved children. Your children was his children. You know, even as a teenager, we all, you know, as a family, you know, they say it takes a village, and it does. And that's basically we all did the same thing, but he loved kids, period. But he loved his family as well. He loved his friends. And he was just that outgoing guy. Like, he was full of life all the time. Whether he was fussing, whether he was laughing, he was just so loving all the time. Like, if you knew him, you feisty, loving, arrogant sometimes. Very headstrong. And he was just different. Like, in a different way, like in a good, different way. It was like a brother-sister relationship. So it felt great to be one of the ones that he said, I love that girl right there. Regardless of what we had going on, my cousin was always there for me with anything. I don't care what it is. He always had my back. Even when I got on my own, he got on his own, we were still close to each other. If we were struggling at the time, we were helping each other. Like, it was never no, oh, he's better than me, she's better than me, none of that. It was like the same. We loved each other the same, I believe. Like, every day I wake up, he's calling me, come over here. And I'm going over there, I'm going to get him from work. We hanging out at my house. Just what we dreamed about being kids, growing up in our own houses and having each other at our own houses.
In late 2019 and into 2020, Derrick's life was in flux. There was a lot of good, certainly, but he was also going through some very difficult experiences. One of the positives was that he'd achieved real independence, which made Tamara proud.
And most of what I try to embed in them is be something, don't depend. I'm the same way. Don't depend on nobody. Be able to take care of yourself. And Tank did that. He took care of himself. He had got his own place, which is where he went missing from. He had finally got his own place. He had finally got himself together. He was working, and he finally got where he wanted to be. And he was getting all right. He had a job with Walmart, and then he moved into Magnolia Apartments in Valdosta, Georgia. He was proud. He was like, oh, Mom, I'm getting my own apartment. I finally did it. He was so happy. He was very happy to get his apartment. And I was happy for him. I was like, now you see it's more in life. You got your own place. Now you work on getting your own car. He was happy. He was proud of himself. But he also quiet. He don't want nobody at his house because he had got sick.
You'll remember at the beginning of the episode that we mentioned that Derrick had been facing an illness. His mother and cousin tell us that he discovered that he had cancer. At first, there was some difficulty in diagnosing his condition. Here's what Tamara explained.
He had got sick, and we thought it was a spider bite. So he was going back and forth to the doctor. So he started getting a little down about that. And he used to go to Augusta to a doctor down there once a month until they was prepping him up for surgery. He was supposed to have surgery February the 4th, and he went missing November the 7th. He didn't never want me to see him down. One thing about him, he never wanted me to see him sick. He never wanted me to go to any of his doctor's appointments because I am very sensitive too about my kids, and he probably would get tired of me crying or whatever because I cry. And I guess he wanted to be strong, so I guess I wasn't strong enough.
Tia tells us that Derrick was on a variety of medication as part of his cancer treatment, and it made him very tired. So he went out less with his friends than he used to, and he was obviously very worried about his diagnosis. But that wasn't his only concern that fall. Derrick had been in a serious relationship for some time, but based on social media screenshots that we have reviewed, most of which have been deleted from his accounts, things were volatile in that relationship. Derrick's family has explained to us that his partner was not publicly out, and that was frustrating for Derrick, who wanted to live their life together openly. This tension culminated in Derrick making a post, or possibly multiple public posts, identifying his partner by name and photo on social media. We've seen one of these posts via screenshot. This was a source of immediate strife, both in the relationship and in discussion among people they knew. Derrick's cousin Tia was worried. She thought that there might be some repercussions.
I tried to kind of like diffuse that or kind of calm it down because I had people coming to me. I think at that time we were bickering, which of course, we did that anyway, but not like this. And see, when we ever had any issues, we'd be okay. So it's not like, we hated each other. So I think he literally he didn't like me trying to basically say, he thought I was being messy, but he didn't like me trying to say, take that down.
Tamara remembers the event occurring in late September, around the time of her wedding. It was around that time, too, that she tried to talk Derrick and her other children into using the Life 360 app, which she had just learned about, so that they could track each other as a family. She had already been concerned about Derrick due to his illness, and his personal conflicts didn't make her feel any better.
Somebody had introduced me to Live 360. It's an app the way, you know, where everybody at, you know. So I say, Tank, put this Live 360 on your phone. And he was like, Mom, you don't want you in my business. I said, I ain't trying to be in your business. I just want to know if something happened to you, I can come to you. He was like, no, you just want to be in my business. I said, all you got to say in my business. I said, yeah, you're right. I want to be in your business. So put the Live 360 on your phone. But he never did. He never did.
In early November of 2020, Tamara tells us that she began to feel ill, a combination of physical unwellness and intense anxiety that something was wrong with one of her children. It wasn't something that she could clearly explain, just a sense of unease, but that soon developed into actual physical symptoms.
3 days prior to before something happened, I got sick. My blood pressure was high. They was trying to put me in the hospital, but I wouldn't go. I knew it was something wrong, but I couldn't put my hand on it. My blood pressure was 180 over 101. They say I was in stroke. And I wouldn't go to the hospital. They kept me at the office, and they kept me there about 2 hours to get it down some. They got it down to 150 over 90, and they let me came home. But I stayed in the bed. I didn't go to work. I was just sick. I didn't know what was wrong with me. My head was killing me.
Tamara began calling her children, one by one, to speak to them, and everything was all right. She did speak to one of her sons, who was incarcerated at that time, who told her that he had been suffering from depression. And for a little while, she thought that maybe that had been the source of her unease. But even after she spoke to her son and advised him and talked to him about registering for a GED program that he'd been thinking about, she still felt like something was off. Days passed. She couldn't shake that feeling. On November 7th, she called her mother to discuss her fears.
I was like, something ain't right. It's something wrong. And my mama was just like, calm down, calm down. You're going to end up in the hospital. I just kept telling her, I said, something wrong. I was calling. I was like, Mom, something wrong, something wrong. Have you heard from Tank? She said, yeah, I went by there. She went by there that Tuesday.
Tuesday would have been November 3rd, 2020. So 4 days before Derrick was last seen. That Saturday, though, Tamara got another call from another relative.
So my cousin called me, and she was like, you heard from Tank? And I was like, no, I haven't. Mama said he was doing all right. He said he was supposed to be going to Atlanta with me, but he changed his mind. He was waiting on his boyfriend to come by before he left. Like that. He said he wasn't going nowhere until he talked to his boyfriend. And I was like, okay, well, let me call him. So I didn't get no answer. But the number that I have, he didn't have that number. He switched numbers so much. So I called his grandmama. And I said, you heard from Tank? She said, yeah. I took him some pig feet over there about 5 o'clock. I said, well, how was he doing? She said, he was doing all right, like that. I said, okay. I said, because my cousin just called me and asked me had I heard from him. She said, well, I ain't called to ask them how they taste. Let me call them. And that's when they gave me the government number. And she called. And she said, I ain't getting no answer like that. She said, well, he usually call me and tell me how my pig feet taste like that. And I said, dang. I said, well, I'm going to keep calling. Something ain't right. So I called his friend Kiki. And I said, you heard from Tank? She was like, no. I went and picked up my son at 1 o'clock. He was all right. He said he wasn't feeling good.
Tamara tells us it was then that she realized where her bad feeling had been coming from. She knew then that something was wrong with Derrick.
My heart, it felt like somebody just pulled, like, you know, like a body coming out of me, like a soul or something. It's like I got sick. I said, I hope they ain't did nothing to my son.
When she and her other relatives went to his house, they found he was not at home, but there were signs that he had been there recently. From what we were told, police did not visit the apartment immediately, but when they did, they noted the same things that Derrick's family had. That's according to his cousin, Tia.
They wouldn't follow up with him. Everybody's just afraid for their lives.
Do you know anything about when they searched his apartment? If they found anything, notable?
No, they didn't find anything. The only thing that they found was, what we know is he was getting ready to go somewhere. That's it. And that's how we put the narrative together of how or where that he could have been kidnapped. Like, they lured him out of his house because he had a tub full of water. Also, he had medicine that he had to take. He always carried a bag with him. I don't care what it is. He's always going to have his charger. He's always going to have his life with him. So for him to leave all of that and he's gone, he was getting ready to go out with a friend, which is what the friend said. He was getting ready to go out. They were getting ready to go out. So he was already preparing himself to get ready to go.
Did anybody see him leave his apartment?
No, nobody saw him leave.
When Derrick's family found him missing, they immediately began to search for him. They called his friends, and they attempted to locate him via his phone. That's one item that was not in his apartment. As you'll recall, Derrick had declined to use Life 360, but one of his friends used a social app to try and target his current location. They got in the car and rode around, trying to pin down where he was. It seemed to Tamara and the searchers that his phone was moving at a steady pace.
And everywhere that we went when we were searching, it was like the person was 2 minutes away from us. So everywhere we went, those 2 minutes, it was like they was 2 more minutes away. It was like they was following us while we were searching, but they had his phone. They was on us, like they was following us as we were searching for him. Because we did a search, like we was all in woods. We was everywhere.
Ultimately, they weren't able to track down his phone themselves. We don't have verification on what, if any, information law enforcement was able to gather from Derrick's phone, though Tia thinks that law enforcement was able to track down his last ping. Once Derrick's disappearance was reported in the papers, people did begin to talk, but not, Tia tells us, to law enforcement. The stories that emerged varied, but they all had one thing in common. A number of people, sometimes a few, sometimes a large group, had kidnapped Tank from his apartment. That would have to have occurred in the daytime, based on what we know about the timeline of his disappearance. Why no one else has come forward with information regarding that, we don't know. To Tia's knowledge, the most consistent story has centered around several people, known to Derrick and to others in his life.
Do you know if the police have interviewed any of those people that you were talking about?
I'm not sure, but I don't think that they interviewed enough people. A lot of people that the detective was trying to interview, they would never talk to him.
And that's what, like, it gives me an evil feeling because all of these people know something and they won't say anything. Anonymously write a letter, nothing. Whether they feel like it's going to be helpful or not, it doesn't matter. Do something. He had friends that won't even show up for him. Obviously, he loved them. He had friends, that's why I had to reword it. It wasn't, Tank had a lot of friends that loved him. No, he had a lot of friends he loved. He cared for. He would do the same for them, and nobody is speaking up.
But they were speaking to Tamara, both people she knew and strangers. They began to contact her all sorts of ways, and they continue to this day, with stories that keep her up at night. She was told detailed rumors involving torture and pain that no one should have to imagine, least of all the mother of the alleged victim.
People was calling me. They was telling me, like, when you were searching for 2 weeks, they had him tied up in the house. They took everything from him, then they killed him. Like, they was telling me all kinds, oh, you need to tell them to go sweep the river, Tallahassee. I'm like, it's 2 years if the alligators ain't got them. Like, and I was like, why would y'all tell me this?
Tamara says that she takes all this information to law enforcement, but that she feels frustrated in the lack of progress in Derrick's case. She feels that she has had difficulty communicating with the detective that's in charge.
He was just like, well, ain't nobody calling me. Well, I do the best I can do. I have several cases sitting on my desk. I can't just stop at this one. And I know that. I understand that. But if I hear something, I'm going to tell you. Like, that's what I'm supposed to do. Like, whether you look into it or not, I wanted you to have notes of everything that I know.
Tia feels like the information that she receives needs to be curated before she delivers it to her aunt, both because so much of it is gossip and because she worries that it isn't being taken seriously. She doesn't directly interact with law enforcement, but she brings anything she considers to be vital to Tamara.
No, I don't call personally. I let my aunt do all of that. But if I get information, I'll take it to her, depending on what kind of information it is, depending on what it is, how severe I think it is. Some things that I feel people are just talking, they don't really know. It's not going to get us nowhere. I pray every day that somebody's heart is, because it's nothing to leave an anonymous tip. You know, I feel if it was me, I wouldn't have an issue with anything that I know. With I would leave an anonymous tip if I'm concerned about my life, you know, and that's possible to do. No one has done that yet. They are scared to death, seems like. And they're probably thinking they don't want to get in it, and so I'm not sure if it's people that are talking, like they'll come to me with what they know, or if I hear something, I'll go and follow up on it with that person. I don't care. I'm telling you, I'm 10 toes about my cousin. So what I hear, and they'll tell me stuff like, you know, but it's still, they're not going to go to the police. It's like they don't want to get in it.
Do you think there's anything people who are listening now who live in Valdosta could do to help the case move forward?
Open up their mouths. It's nothing. Open up your mouth. I mean, that's somebody's kid, you know, regardless of if he was well known, if anyone liked him or not, he was somebody's child, you know, and you have this information, go to somebody, go anonymously, reach out to his mother. I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, his mama, we don't think that she'll want to, you know, hear from us. Maybe that'll bring too much pain, or maybe it'll make her cry, or no, this is actually what she wants. This is what she needs. We need that support. He had a lot of friends, but where? We don't see any friends. We don't talk to any of them. They don't follow up with her. They don't check on her, making sure nothing is needed from them. So that's all we need. We need support. We don't have any support. We just want to bury him. We want to give him a proper burial, you know. Bring him home. That's really what we want to do, is just bring him home. Of course, the guys that have something to do with it, they're going to get theirs regardless whether they get prosecuted or not. This is just what I feel in my heart, because I know how God works. Everybody has to pay for their sins. Everybody has to pay for their karma. Everything is going to come back. That's what I believe. I believe in good and bad karma.
Today, Derrick's family is seeking the direct help of the people of Valdosta, who they know can help resolve his missing persons case. They feel the information as to what happened to Derrick is readily available, and that if those who know something come forward and speak with the police, anonymously if need be, it will be a vital step. They hope to improve their own level of communication with law enforcement, and they say they need support in raising awareness of Derrick's case, in organized search efforts, and in sharing his missing persons information across the state of Georgia. We've posted a flyer for Derrick on our social media, and Derrick's mother, Tamara, has a Facebook page dedicated to his case. You can find that linked in our show notes. At the time of his disappearance, Derrick Evans Jr. was described as, quote, a 26-year-old African-American male, 5'11" in height and 198 pounds, with short, bright red or pink hair. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Derrick Tank Evans Jr., please call VPD Investigations Bureau at 229-293-3145 or call the crime tip line at 229-293-3091 to remain anonymous. The Fall Line returns in November with our next full season, and we're going back to Nashville to feature the highest number of unidentified persons cases, John and Jane Does, that we've ever covered on the show, and to work with Detective Matthew Filter in hopes that your tips can identify some of Metro Nashville's coldest cases. Make sure that you don't miss an episode. If you know of a case that should be covered on the Fall Line, there's a link to our case submission form in the show notes. Thank you for listening. The Fall Line is an independently produced show, and we appreciate listener support. It allows us to do research, obtain FOIA, pay our content advisors, and support and donate to the causes we care about. If you try out the products we advertise, please use our sponsor codes. It really helps. And please take a moment to rate and review our show on your podcast app of choice. If you'd like to pre-order my book, Lay Them to Rest, at 20% off and receive 2 bonuses, a podcast episode and a Zoom hangout with Josh Hallmark from True Crime BS, you still have a chance. Pre-order by October 16th. You can find the link in the show notes to get both the discount and the link to the bonuses. The book covers years of my life working on a Jane Doe case and the world of forensic scientists who resolve unidentified persons cases. And if you'd like to support the show and the stories we cover, join us on Patreon or Apple Premium. 100% of our Patreon and Apple Premium earnings are supporting our Family Therapy Fund and actively paying for therapy for families who have appeared on our show. On Patreon, you can get early release ad-free versions of our regular episodes for $5 a month. If you prefer Apple Premium, you can subscribe there as well. On Patreon, we also post occasional giveaways, updates, and blogs, which all patrons can enjoy, starting at just $1. The Fall Line is written, hosted, and researched by Laurah Norton, with additional research assistance by Brian Waters, Kiana Burgess, and Michaela Morrill. Interviews by Brooke Hargrove. Produced, engineered, and scored by Maura Curry. Content advisement by Brandy C. Williams, Liv Fallon, and Vic Kennedy. And as always, our most special thanks to Liz Lipka.